Okay, so we're gonna be, I'm gonna be showing you guys today how to throw on the wheel. And the first step is you're gonna get your clay and you're gonna come over here to a wedging block and you're gonna wedge. And what I'm doing is called wedging. It's it's really similar to kneading bread. So what I'm doing is I'm applying pressure, I'm rocking it back and forth. And the purpose of wedging is a couple things. It gets out all of the air bubbles that are in the clay. Air bubbles will really mess you up when you're throwing, and also when it gets fired, it could make it explode. So I'm getting out air bubbles, and I'm also just kind of distributing the moisture in this clay so that it's even moisture all throughout. This is actually clay that I've recycled. It was clay that was used in class, and it got dried out, and we had little scraps, and so I broke it down and recycled it. And sometimes recycled clay isn't always evenly moist, so that's why I'm doing that. So once I've done this to a point where I'm satisfied and I feel like it's pretty evenly moist and I've got all the air bubbles out, I can take it over to the wheel. So come on over to the wheel and let me show you. This wheel's pretty messy because I did a demo last class and I didn't clean it up because I knew I was going to do another demo. But usually you'll clean your wheel after use. So I've got a few tools over here. This is my pedal. And before you start throwing with the pedal, it's a good idea to just kind of play with it a little bit and get used to the speed. So before I even put clay on, I can make it go a little faster, slower, and just get used to the speed so that I know I can control it, okay? Then, I'm taking a video. Thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I like to slap this a little bit and round the bottom out. I'm looking for a pear shape, okay? One of the reasons why I slap this is so that when I throw it down on the wheel, it'll kind of flatten out and it'll stick to the wheel really well. So as you saw, I moistened this. You don't want it to be too wet, but I moistened it a little bit to help the clay stick. Now, I'm gonna eyeball it. I'm gonna hold my pear shape up, 1, 2, and I'm gonna slam it down to the center the best I can, okay? You do need to slam it down because it does need to really stick to the wheel. Now I'm gonna spin it slowly, and I'm gonna take my hands, they're still dry, and I'm gonna do like this. Now, this is the first step to centering the clay. When I'm hitting down at an angle, so I'm hitting towards the center and down. So, and both of my hands need to hit at the same time. Because if I hit like this, I'll be throwing the off center every time I hit it. Okay, so you hit it both like this. And this also helps to compress the clay a little bit and just get it ready for centering. When you're satisfied with that, you can go ahead and wet your hands, wet the clay, and now start the real centers. So the first thing I like to do when I center is I use this part of my hand, which I'm going to call the heel of my right hand. Anchor your elbow on your knee. You always want to anchor your arms on your legs so that they don't flop around because the clay is strong. And so you want to use as much of your body as you can so that you're stronger. So I'm going to hook my hands together. I'm going to use the heel of this hand right here, and I'm going to push on the top of the clay. And you'll see it starts to flatten down a little bit. This is also really helping me stick it to the wheel really well, okay? Now the next thing I'm going to do, keep your hands in the clay wet really good at this point, is I'm going to start squeezing it back in. So again, I'm anchoring my elbows on my legs, and I'm going to start squeezing this back in. The goal is when we center it, when this thing spins, it shouldn't look like it's moving at all. If you look at it right now and I spin it, see how it kind of wiggles? When it's centered, it really shouldn't look like it's moving at all. So what I'm doing is I'm squeezing it in, and as I'm squeezing it in, what happens to the height? It gets taller, okay? So as I'm squeezing it in, it's going to get taller. Okay? And now I can push it back down. I'm going to use the heel of this hand again. At about 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and push it down. Now, as a beginner, centering is very, very important, and it's very tricky. So you're going to center for as long as you need to. You're going to go back and forth, pushing it down, doing the sides, pushing it down, doing the sides. And I had a ceramic teacher in college, Jim Chalkley, shout out Jim Chalkley, who always would call this like a hut. So you focus on the roof of the hut and then the walls of the hut. The roof of the hut, the walls of the hut. And then the roof and the walls together. Does that make sense as an analogy? I thought it did. So as you can see, let's see, we've got this centered now. This is centered pretty well. So as you can see, when I spin it, see how it doesn't really look like it's moving? It's not really wiggling, it's kind of holding still. That's how we know it's centered. And especially as a beginner, you may have to do the process I just showed you 3, 4, 5, 6 times. Do it as many times as you need to until this thing does not look like it's wiggling. Okay? See how I needed to use a little more strength. So I'm pushing my body over the wheel, really anchoring this elbow. So whenever you don't feel strong enough, think about how you can incorporate more of your body. And I'm using a lot of clay. You guys, in my beginner's class, you won't be using quite this much clay to start off with. I'm using more clay so it's easier to see. Okay, so this is centered. I'm satisfied with this centering. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to make the first hole. We're going to be making bowls. I think bowls are the easiest thing to throw as a beginner because the clay naturally kind of wants to come out anyways, because centrifugal force pushes the walls out. And so as a beginner, it's like, hey, that's it. It works with centrifugal force, so it's easier, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make my hole. Now, people have different preferences. Some people like to make their hole with their thumbs. Some people like to use 2 fingers and go in. Whatever feels comfortable for you. If you've never done it before, I'll suggest first trying with your thumbs. So I'm always going to hook my hands together for stability. I'm going to go right in the center. I'm going to spin my wheel slow. And I'm going to go straight down. Now, if it starts to feel like the clay is dry and it's hard for your fingers to push on the clay, just stop and add a little water because you want your fingers to be gliding smoothly. So if they're not, just stop and add a little water. I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom because I don't want a hole in the bottom of my bowl, right? I still need to have like a floor in there. So I'm not going to go all the way to the bottom. I'm going to leave about this much clay, okay? Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw out the bottom, okay? Now, this part is very important to do plenty slow. So, if you watch my fingers first, I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to pull and drag my hand to the wall of the bowl. So, I'm going to start in the middle, and I'm going to start pulling out. And you don't want to pull faster than you are spinning. Jonathan, can you go see if you can help Camille? With her camel.
For what?
With her camel. Because I'm helping these 2 ladies. So I'm drawing the bottom of my bowl. And I'm going nice and slow. And I don't know if you can really tell, but the direction I'm pulling is from the inside out this way, okay? The wheel does all the spinning, so we don't need to move around. We hold still, and I'm just pulling out towards my right leg, okay? So, I'm going to go in and I'm going to draw this out a little bit more. Yeah, right of pass. Teachers always got to multitask. Okay. Now, if you see in here, you can see my finger lines. See the throwing lines where I pulled that out? I need to compress this bottom, okay? Now, the reason that I need to compress this bottom is because if I don't, and this thing fires, a lot of times you'll get cracks in the bottom of your bowl. So, I'm spinning it, I'm using my sponge, and I'm pushing the bottom, and I'm going from the inside to the outside, back to the inside, and I'm pushing the bottom so that it's compressed and dense, so that I don't get any cracks in the bottom of my bowl once it's fired. I'm also flattening it out because when you're eating cereal, you don't want to have a whole bunch of ridges in the bottom of your bowl, right? You also might want to think about what kind of food you're going to be putting in this bowl because that kind of has an effect on the shape. You know, a cereal bowl is shaped a little different than a salad bowl. A salad bowl is usually short and nice and wide for your salad. A soup bowl is usually taller so it'll spill your soup. So So think about what kind of bowl you might want to make. Is it a decorative bowl? Okay. So I've compressed the bottom and I'm ready for my first pull. Now this is where the magic starts to happen. So there's lots of different ways to pull, but for your first pull, I'm going to suggest index finger and thumb. They're going to start right here. And like, if this is a clock, this is 3 o'clock, this is 6 o'clock. We're here, 4 or 5 o'clock, okay? We're going to pinch a little bit and we're just going to pull our hand up really slowly, okay? You can see I've got some cracks here. This clay is not got a lot of elasticity right now. That's what I get for recycling it. Okay, so my right hand is going to support on the outside, support my thumb. I'm going to spin nice and slow. Now, do not try to move too much clay up at a time. Just move a little bit of clay up at a time. You can do multiple pulls. You're not making your bowl in one pull. You're just straightening up the walls, going straight up. Now you'll see my rim is getting a little skinny, so I'm going to compress my rim. So I'm going to make a little pinch here, and I'm going to push this finger down, and I'm going to compress this rim. Okay, now I'm going to go for another pull. Now my wall is getting too tall for my hand to fit like this, so at this point my left hand is going to go on the inside, my right hand is going to go on the outside, and you, when Chanel comes back, you can go to the bathroom. Okay. So I'm going to put my left hand on the inside, right hand on the outside, and I do want to hook my fingers. They have to communicate, right? And our brain, it's easier for our brain to have our hands communicate if they're touching in some way. So I like to have my right hand will hold on, like I say, like for support. So my right hand is pushing up. Your right hand is going to be doing more work because as this wheel spins, the clay wants to come out. So if your right hand is pushing back in, then it will force the clay up. And usually you want to stop a little bit before you get to the rim. The rim has a tendency to get skinny fast. Compress the rim. And as you can see, my walls are getting taller and thinner with every pull. I'm going to show you a little bit of a different way to pull this time. I'm going to pull with a sponge. I like pulling with a sponge because it kind of feels like a little, just a little extra support, and you don't get as much of these. You can see my throwing lines. If you look in close here, you can see all my lines where my fingers were going and throwing up. The sponge gives a little bit of a different effect. So I like to hold my sponge like this. It's also a great technique for you ladies who have fingernails. I don't have fingernails, but it's a good technique for you to learn. Okay, so again, left hand is supporting on the inside. My right elbow is hooked on my leg, and I'm slowly working my way from the bottom of this vessel up. My left hand is supporting the inside. My right hand is adding pressure on the outside, thinning out these walls. We want the walls to be even thickness all the way up. And there we go. Now I need to compress the rim again. Every pull you want to compress the rim. Now these walls are getting to a pretty good thickness to where I feel like I can start adding a little shape to my bowl. So I want to think about what shape I want. You can use your hands to shape it, or you can use a tool like a rib. You can use a fancy wooden rib or a metal rib, or look at this rib. This is a Subway gift card cut up. So you can get really creative. Now I'm going to add a little pressure on the outside this time. I'm not going to support on the inside. I'm not going to support on the outside like I have been, because I do actually want the clay to start flaring out. So I'm thinking about my shape. I'm using my tool. You don't have to use a rib. You could just use your hand for this too. I just want to show you different techniques. This is going to be kind of a big decorative bowl. Okay, I'm going to get in there with a sponge now. Sometimes the rib takes away a little bit of clay too. It's a little harder. You want to be careful because this clay, like I said, it wants to fly out, especially if you spin the wheel faster. If I just spun the wheel really fast and didn't do anything with my hands, the walls would start flying out. And you can use your right hand to kind of constrict where it flares. So if you look right now, Razan, can you get the angle down a little bit more? So you can see my right hand is constricting. I don't want that part to flare. I want mostly the top part to flare right now. Take your time, move the clay slowly. When you move it fast, sometimes it gets finicky with you, so it's better to do this nice and slow. So I'm starting to get kind of a nice little shape. You can see it's flaring out a little. And as you can see, my hands don't go left or right. They really only go up and down, okay? So the wheel is going round and round. There's no need for me to move all over the wheel, okay? My hands should really only be going up and down, for the most part. Okay, you want to keep a pretty good wetness as well on the surface. Wet enough that your hands slide over the surface, but not too wet that it starts to get saturated, because when it gets saturated, it gets weak. Okay, so this is about where I'm going to stop for this demo. I just wanted to show you a really simple form that you can throw, and let me just show you how to finish this off. I'm going to take a wooden tool on the bottom, and I'm going to trim off some of this thickness down here. When this gets a little harder, like closer to leather hard, I will put this back on the wheel and I'll trim the bottom. But for right now, I just want to prepare it to come off the wheel. So I'm just taking a little bit off this bottom here. Okay, and I'll take a wire tool, which I think I lent my wire tool out. But I'm gonna have to go grab my wire tool. But look, watch this. I'm gonna take the wire tool in my hand. I'm gonna push it against the surface. I'm gonna spin slowly, and I'm gonna slowly slide the wire tool under this pot. That will release it from the wheel. I can take my hands under the bowl. I can lift it and set it somewhere to dry. Okay? So that's the basics of wheel throwing a bowl, and